I'm joined by David Kelly, former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Full disclosure, my former boss. Andrew gave us his thoughts, yours big picture on what we learned today, what matters.
I think what matters is it really comes down to the rule of law, frankly, because I think that what this report represents, it's kind of like the perfect paradigm for what a perfect prosecutor should do. It was very measured. It was written very thoroughly, very thoughtfully. He talked about finding the facts and letting the facts lead them wherever it took them, without fear or favor. And I think that's what anybody should hope a prosecutor would do.
I want to get to another piece. I told viewers we're going to go through this as the hour goes down, and we haven't hit this yet. Elon Musk's Twitter basically has a pretty unusual section of this new report. An attempt to basically slow walk or defy a lawful search warrant that involved Trump's account. And basically, I want to read from the report, the district court found that Twitter's actions were extraordinary, that it was resisting a standard non-disclosure order where basically they would turn over Trump's materials without telling him, which was what they were told to do by the courts. It was a few months into Musk running Twitter, or X as he now calls it, and it failed. Quote, the district court ultimately held that this NDO lawfully prohibited Twitter from notifying Trump about the warrant because the company was held in contempt. It cost them another $350,000. Any hope for the Supreme Court to side with them failed. What's happening here, David, and how unusual is that?
Well, I think it's unusual, but there's a lot of things we don't know. We don't know how often, and I think probably rarely, that Twitter got these types of requests from the government. And then the question becomes, if they got others, how did they treat those? Is it because, did they fight this hard because of who the subscriber was, or was it a general principle? We don't know the answer to that. We can guess what it is, but I think any company, when you have a board of directors, you have a general counsel, you have a CEO, rarely are you going to find somebody taking this type of hit where you're getting, really beaten over the head by a judge. You're being sanctioned. You're being held in contempt. No company is going to say, for one subscriber, no company is likely to do that, depending on who the subscriber is.
And with everything that Dave's saying, it's worth people noting that it's not unusual to have a order from a court that says don't disclose this to anyone else, because the government very often does covert investigations. And they don't want the targets of the investigation to know all of the steps, and that's lawful.
Sure.
And so what's unusual, or appears quite unusual here, is challenging that when it is so routine. And so it does lead to the impression that it is being done because of the subscriber here, meaning Donald Trump.
David, how do you view one overlap between the Mueller report and this one, where there's pretty direct reference to former defendant Trump's attacks on the system, on the honest law enforcement people, and the pressure on others to shield or hide potentially criminal conduct rather than cooperate?
Well, first, I think the Mueller report and Smith report are two different reports, really.
Yep.
And well, they should be, for the reasons that Andrew mentioned in the earlier segment. But I think, it spells out here some pretty troubling information about suppression of evidence and obstruction and so forth. And again, he spells it out in very, plain vanilla terms that are pretty much unassailable.
Yeah. Let's talk to both of you about, so what? Here we are, after all this. And is this a story, and I want to give just three visuals. The criminal enterprise, which Jack Smith refers to. He refers to the lawyers as accomplices or co-conspirators. He refers to Trump as basically having the extra powers and ability to get more people supporting him. And we have a chart here of the multiple enterprises that have been, again, this is according to juries and the legal process. And it's pretty damning when you actually remember all of this going into two campaigns in the business. Is this the story? Is it the others who've also gotten in trouble in a different way? We can show you all the convicted and indicted allies and aides, and a lot of these proceedings continue in the states, regardless of today's end of the federal probe. Is this the key story? Or finally, is it the plots, which we have documented along with a lot of other law enforcement and journalists and the Jan 6 committee, which now we show Andrew, I don't know about you, David. I can't tell by your hair, but Andrew's old enough to remember when this was without any legal update, because we were just charting these things as facts and evidence, and then they were indicted, and now they're dismissed. Which of these three tells the story?
So I think they all tell the story, and I think that there's even more to the story than just Donald Trump and the people who have been convicted, either because they've pled guilty or because they've gone to trial and juries have found them guilty. And that is the complicity of people in Congress and also the voters who are unwilling to take it as seriously as I think they should. And so I think there's a lot of blame to go around. I think you would expect more from public officials who know better, intelligence community officials. We're in the middle of the nomination season now, where that's going to be front and center. But also the idea that you could have a chart the charts that you just showed, and it was not enough to carry the day in terms of, and again, that's not a policy issue. You could have a wonderful Republican, you could have a wonderful Democrat.
Yeah.
All of that's so great.
So David, again, and let people absorb the plot arrows.
Yeah.
We'll put that back up. That's one way people view this. After all this, okay, we charted it. Okay, we documented it. It's dismissed. Is it that? Or is it the many people, even if the alleged boss got away, these other convictions, which we can also show?
Yeah, the way I look at this, though, is a little bit differently, which is this is kind of looking through a prism of accountability, right? On one hand, it's the accountability of the prosecutors. And what they did here was, we have been working hard for the last 2 years and addressing this incident. And this is exactly what we did and how we did it and why we did it. All right, so that's one angle of the prism. The other angle of the prism is what Andrew was talking about. There's a lot of people around who didn't take the right steps, there was people in Congress who could have moved to impeach but didn't for perhaps the wrong reason. And then there's people who are in the circle who maybe didn't do what they should have done and yielded where they should not have yielded. So, like I say, and I think this kind of holds everybody not accountable in the sense that they're paid the price, but accountability and transparency, that this is what has happened and this is how we know it happened the way it happened.
Yeah.